This is a painting from my childhood. It was always hanging in our house as I was growing up as a kid. My grandfather was the art director for McCall's magazine, so he got to meet a lot of different artists and work with a lot of different studios. And the story is that he did some work with the Disney studio, and in return he got this painting.
And they just gave it to him?
As far as I know, yes.
And now it's yours, so you've had it how many years now?
Oh my gosh, almost 50.
The moment this watercolor surfaced on the table, it felt like opening a time capsule sealed during the golden age of Disney. At first glance, the piece almost tricks the eye. The colors are so clean and balanced that you'd swear it came from a high-quality print. But a closer look reveals real brushwork, layered gouache, and the unmistakable hand-painted charm Disney's early studio artists were known for. What makes this artwork extraordinary isn't just its beauty, it's the era it belongs to. Created in 1941, this single sheet gathers characters who were still taking shape inside Disney's bustling animation studios. The dancing ostriches and hippos from Fantasia, the three little pigs from one of Disney's earliest breakout shorts, the gentle stork who delivered Dumbo, the tiny mouse who gave him courage. Even the shy dragon Disney fans often forget existed. They all appear together long before many of them became icons. Because the artwork was published in a 1941 issue of McCall's magazine, its date is solidly confirmed.
One of a kind. It's just totally extraordinary. As far as value, we think a reasonable auction estimate would be in the $6,000 to $8,000 range.
Wow.
And that might be conservative.
Wow.
When I was almost 5 years old, my family went to Disneyland in California. My grandfather reached into his pocket and pulled out a ticket book and tore out the back coupon and handed it to me with a ballpoint pen. He said, "Go over and ask that man for his autograph." Well, okay, not knowing what's going on, I did what he said, and he said, "Do you know who that was?" And of course I said, "Well, no, I'm pretty sure I don't." He said, "That was Walt Disney." I've had it hanging on my wall ever since.
A genuine Walt Disney signature created by Walt's own hand, and that's far rarer than most people realize. Disney's name appears everywhere, yet his actual autograph appears far less often. Secretaries signed the majority of documents and fan requests, and many supposed Disney signatures seen today aren't authentic at all. That's what makes this one so remarkable. It's real, it's personal, and it's tied to a childhood memory captured in a photograph taken the very same day.
Have you ever had this value?
As far as value to me, it's pretty much priceless because he handed it to me.
Well, and you framed it with this collector's plate, which is just a decorative value.
Sure.
But the wonderful signature is going to be between $1,500 and $2,500.
Wow, that's really super.
Before Snow White ever danced across a movie screen, the world of the Seven Dwarfs first lived on paper, in small, imaginative artworks created by some of Disney's most influential early illustrators.
I think it's a watercolor painting of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that my great-grandfather got from a client. He was an advertiser in New York years ago, and it's been in the family ever since.
What can I tell you?
Well, is it a watercolor painting? Is it an original? I think it is. There's stickers on the back that say it's before the time of the movie.
The painting is unmistakably the work of Gustaf Tenggren, a Swedish-born illustrator whose fascination with folklore shaped his entire career. Before joining Disney, he built a reputation painting trolls, gnomes, woodland spirits, the exact atmosphere Walt needed when developing his first feature-length animated film. Tenggren was hired to help build the visual language for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and his early concepts gave the dwarfs their earthy, European charm. His interpretations were later softened for animation, but that original spirit survives in artworks like this one. Created around 1936, the watercolor shows the dwarfs with more rugged lines and a fairy tale quality closer to Arthur Rackham's storybook style, one of Tenggren's biggest inspirations. The sticker on the back, promoting the movie's upcoming release, hints that this piece wasn't just concept art, it likely played a role in early advertising as well. The result is a one-of-a-kind treasure, a bridge between Disney's earliest experimentation and the finished 1937 masterpiece.
A conservative auction estimate would be in the $20,000 to $25,000 range.
What? For real? 20 to 25,000.
It's a treasure.
Wow.
I have to say, I went that way too.
Wow, I always loved it, but I had no idea. I mean, it was just something through the family. It was something
Now
that
you can
reminds
love
me
it
of my
more.
great-grandfather. Yeah,
You
wow.
love it a lot more. I can't tell you how excited I was to see it, and so glad you brought it to me.
You have a poker face. Well, thank you so much.
When the coat first emerges, it looks like something lifted straight out of a bold 1980s fashion magazine. Oversized shoulders, plush faux fur, and a shade of pink loud enough to announce itself before anyone wearing it even enters the room. But this isn't just retro style. It's a rare blend of high fashion and Disney storytelling, stitched together during a moment when Disney was experimenting with adult apparel that still carried the studio's playful identity.
This coat belonged to my mother. I happened to inherit it. She used to work in fashion advertising design back in Chicago, and she was a big fan of Disney. And this coat was the centerpiece in her wardrobe and her collection for years and years and years. My guess is probably the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, just because I remember it growing up as a child.
Coat tells its own story. Those exaggerated shoulders? Pure early 80s drama, inspired by the bold silhouettes of mid-century Hollywood and revived in a decade obsessed with power dressing. That detail alone locks its creation into the early 1980s, when Walt Disney Productions leaned heavily into branded lifestyle merchandise. What makes the coat stand out is how unusual it is. Most pieces from that line used more traditional colors, but this one went all in. Bubblegum pink over French-made fabric, cut with a swagger that feels theatrical, yet undeniably elegant. And despite its showy look, it's surprisingly soft, a piece meant to be worn, not just displayed. Vintage collectors hunt for items like this, especially ones that combine strong fashion design with Disney provenance.
Currently in the vintage market, they're selling anywhere from $500 to $800 each. So.
Good, wow, that's great.
It was a gift from my father, who in turn got it as a present when he was a child from his great aunt Elizabeth. He has 3 siblings and they each got one, but my dad got this one, and it's hung on the wall in the house in Nashville for my entire life.
The artwork itself is a hand-painted animation cell from The Sorcerer's Apprentice, the sequence that transformed Mickey Mouse from a cheerful mascot into a true cinematic icon. Created between 1937 and 1940, when Fantasia was in production, each cell like this one was painted on thin sheets of clear celluloid, stacked over a studio-prepared background and photographed frame by frame. What you're seeing is one single moment from that long, painstaking process. Collectors have very specific tastes when it comes to animation art, and this cell checks every box. Mickey wears the sorcerer's hat, the defining image from the entire film. Both eyes are visible, an extremely desirable trait, since many cells show characters in mid-blink or in awkward in-between poses. The broom carrying its bucket appears as well, adding action and story to the composition. The painted backdrop behind Mickey was created by the Courvoisier Studio, which crafted special presentation backgrounds for Disney cells, complete with the WDP stamp identifying the piece as original studio material.
The auction value and the market on animation cells are not what it was years ago. However, still very, very saleable, still really, really desirable. And on a good day at auction, I would definitely estimate this. I wouldn't even hesitate to estimate this between $9,000 and $12,000 at least. It's a great piece, really, really super piece.
Well,
and I'm glad you brought it down.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I appreciate it.
These were my great-grandmother's. We found them in a tote of her dolls. They are just Walt Disney bubblegum cards.
Okay, and when did you discover your grandmother's cards?
Last night we were looking through her totes of dolls and we found these at the bottom.
Okay, so you literally discovered these like the night before coming to Antiques Roadshow?
Right before we came.
Issued in 1935 by Gum Inc., a company that would later evolve into the powerhouse Bowman brand, these cards were part of a 96-card set celebrating Mickey at the height of his early stardom. Long before modern trading card culture exploded, these were given out with bubblegum, handled by children, traded, bent, and carried around in pockets. Survival alone makes them impressive. Among the 36 cards brought in, two examples stand out. Both are card number 1, but printed differently. That's not a mistake. The first 24 cards in the set were printed in 2 variations, and the scarcer version includes a different tagline along the bottom border. Collectors hunt for that specific wording, which makes those cards significantly more desirable. Condition-wise, time has left its mark. The edges are worn, colors softened, and surfaces show years of handling, exactly what you'd expect from paper cards that date back to the mid-1930s. Even so, rarity and age outweigh condition here. Surviving examples of this set, especially those with the early printing variations, always attract strong interest.
Conservatively at auction, we would say the group would be worth about $2,000 to $3,000.
Oh, wow. That was not expected.
Awesome. Yes.
That's crazy. I wouldn't have... That's astonishing.
She left you a nice little present in a box of dolls.
Thank you.
It was a gift from my grandmother. She moved to California in the middle 50s, and she sent one of these cells one to me, one to each of my brothers. I don't know where the others are.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one I saved. It was my brother's.
What year was this?
1956, I think. And there was a Donald Duck, and there was a Cinderella.
The cell brought in today features none other than Maleficent, the sorceress who defined Disney villainy long before she became a pop culture icon. The artwork comes from Sleeping Beauty, released in 1959, a film that initially disappointed at the box office, but later became one of Disney's most celebrated achievements. Each cell from that production was hand-painted on celluloid, layered onto a prepared background, and photographed during the animation process. This one shows Maleficent in a rare, almost playful expression, a striking contrast to her usual icy composure. Attached to the back is the original Disneyland Art Corner sticker, a small piece of paper that turns this cell from likely studio art into confirmed production-used animation. That label alone adds tremendous historical weight. Though the background behind her is a printed setup rather than a hand-painted one, the character, pose, and condition make this a standout.
If this came up at auction in this current condition, I'd give it an auction estimate of $4,000 to $6,000.
Thank you.
You should thank your grandmother.
Yes.
And what would your brother say knowing that you'd stolen this?
I might not tell him.
I was walking up a street in Manhattan. As I passed a shop, an antique shop, this was in the window.
Cool.
And when I walked in, I talked to the gal. She said there was 12 of them. These are all original Walt Disney, so she said he did one a month for a year, and they were for the war effort. And so I had been in the Navy, had been in one of these things, and I saw that, and I said, well, I definitely want to buy that. Well, I'd like to buy all of them. And she said 2 of them are already sold. And I said, well, I wound up buying this one.
The artwork belongs to a fascinating chapter of Disney history. During World War II, the studio produced training films, propaganda posters, and morale-boosting imagery for nearly every branch of the military. They even created custom insignias for squadrons, many of them proudly featuring Donald Duck. But this rare piece centers on Pedro, the plucky mail plane from Disney's 1942 film Saludos Amigos. In the movie, Pedro braves storms and mountains to deliver mail, much like the little plane here launching above a carrier deck, satchel by his side. The theme is clear: carrying, delivering, supporting the war effort. Whether it was part of a proposed calendar series or a set of promotional images, its purpose was unmistakably patriotic. And while the signature reads Walt Disney, it reflects the studio system of the era. Skilled Disney artists were authorized to sign his name as part of the brand, not as personal authorship. Even without direct Walt Disney involvement, the painting remains a powerful artifact of wartime creativity.
We're looking at auction conservatively $5,000 to $7,000.
Okay. Well, now I know. I've always wondered, because they told me it was Walt Disney who did it and who signed it, and I could never get an answer one way or the other from anybody, so it's at least nice to know.
Never buy the story, buy the piece, right?
Exactly.
When these 3 small figures are lined up together, it's impossible not to smile. Their cheerful faces and tiny instruments look like something pulled straight from a 1930s toy shop window, and in many ways, they are. These are wind-up versions of Disney's Three Little Pigs, created in Germany during the worldwide craze that followed the 1933 animated short. The cartoon became an instant sensation, winning an Academy Award and inspiring merchandise across the globe.
I inherited them from my Aunt Jerry and Uncle Ralph, and they were a very wealthy couple. They didn't have any children. They did a lot of world travel, and when they passed away, I got the little pigs.
How long have you had these little pigs?
Probably 20 years.
For years, she assumed the toys might be stiff because of the German origins. Instead, they come from another legendary Nuremberg maker, Schuko. Known for inventive mechanical toys, Schuko specialized in wind-ups and tin pieces that moved with surprising personality. By the mid-1930s, they produced these pig characters to meet the enormous demand sparked by Disney's hit film. What makes this particular set exceptional is not just the toys themselves, but everything that survived alongside them. Each pig still has its crisp original box, rare for cardboard packaging from the era, complete with clean labels and sharp corners. The metal keys used to wind the toys are still present as well. Even their condition is remarkably fresh, showing how carefully they were kept over the decades. The characters themselves mirror Disney's storytelling. Fifer with his flute, Fiddler with his bow, and Practical Pig repurposed as a drummer, since a piano would have been too complex for a wind-up design.
The set at auction would be $2,000 to $2,500. Let's wind one of these guys up.
They're cute. They're very cute. I like them a lot.
This is just a small portion of what my grandfather had saved. My grandfather he's right here, and he was the first employee that Walt Disney hired as a park employee. His employee number was 001. You'll see that on his timesheet. But prior to being the chief engineer running in Disneyland, he worked in the shop with other machinists, and they built the train engines that now run at Disneyland.
Before the gates opened and the crowds arrived, he worked behind the scenes as a machinist, helping construct the steam locomotives that would circle the park. Later, he became chief engineer, the man trusted to drive the trains Walt cared so deeply about. In fact, the only time he ever stepped aside from the controls was when Walt himself wanted to climb into the engineer's seat. Among the memorabilia he saved are two remarkable hat badges from the earliest days of Disneyland's railroad operations. These weren't worn by him, engineers used work caps, but by the train conductors responsible for handling passengers. One badge represents a known design cherished by Disneyana collectors. The other is so unusual that even experts had never seen one before. Their condition is excellent, and their story is unbeatable. These aren't just artifacts. They are pieces of Disneyland's foundation, linked directly to the man who helped make the railroad run.
This one is really exciting. Collectors of Disneyana value this at auction around $2,000 to $3,000.
No. Who's driving me home today? No, just this one alone?
Just that one alone. It's really very desirable, it's in great condition, and it's such an important part of Disneyland.
Yeah.
Now this one, I was checking with some fellow experts on Disneyana, and they said this has never been seen, so it's really hard to come up with a price. At least $2,000 for that one.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, great.
So we have some neat things, so we're looking at $4,000 to $5,000.
Right.
Provenance is everything. I think those numbers might be the starting point at auction.
There's a puppet from the early days of television. It's part of the Bill and Cora Baird collection, and I got it at an auction in New York City in 1987. When I was a kid, I loved puppet shows on TV. The first TV show I ever saw was Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. You remember them?
I remember.
Oh, yeah, and I thought television was a puppet show. I didn't realize there was other stuff. And I loved the Baird puppets in particular because they had so much character and animation. And so I watched a program called Whistling Wizard, and Snarky Parker And one day, as an adult, I was going through the New York Times, and there was a picture of Snarky Parker. They were talking about an auction that was upcoming. And I said, I got to go to that auction. And I did. I wound up getting this character who doesn't have a name. He's not a famous actor or anything, but I think he has a lot of charm, and I could afford him.
Bill Baird was widely considered America's greatest puppeteer, a craftsman whose influence paralleled Walt Disney's impact on animation. Most of his creations ended up in museums or private institutions, which makes surviving examples rare. This one still wears its complete original costume, right down to the vintage Macy's Men's Store label stitched inside the clothing, a tiny detail that confirms just how carefully these puppets were built. Although not a starring character, the workmanship is unmistakably Baird, expressive eyes, subtle mechanics, and a presence that immediately grabs attention. Purchased decades ago for $500, this puppet now carries an auction estimate of...
At auction, I think it would bring $1,500. So
really?
You did all right.
That's nice. That's nice to know.
Thank you so much for bringing it in. It just brought back a magical moment in my life.
My great pleasure.
Long before computers took over the animation process, Disney films were created one stroke at a time by artists who painted and inked thousands of drawings by hand.
I brought 2 albums. One is the animation that I inked as an inker in 1939 with Disney Studios.
You worked in the studios?
Yes, I did.
And your job at the studios was to actually take the paint and apply it to the animation cells?
That, and I was an inker too.
And ink the lines that go around?
She joined the studio in the late 1930s, stepping into a job that demanded precision, speed, and a steady hand. Each inker was assigned a sequence, and every cell was timed to the second. Fall behind, and you didn't stay employed long. To avoid distractions, the artists wore headphones so the room stayed focused and silent while they worked. Yet despite the intensity, she remembers it as joyful, a place where she helped bring Pinocchio, Fantasia, Bambi, and later Sleeping Beauty to life. Her personal albums reveal the often invisible steps behind Disney magic. One book contains cells she inked herself, showing outlines and color tests that rarely survive today. Another album preserves animation drawings, loose expressive sketches from Snow White and Pinocchio, trimmed down but still carrying the energy of the animator's original pencil lines. You can trace movement from page to page, watching a character shift expression frame by frame.
If you add everything up, the cells are actually the things that are the most valuable. Unfortunately, they've been cut down and they're not on their full sheets. And the animation drawings, unfortunately, have been trimmed as well. But if you go through the entire book and you add up the whole collection of animation cells and the drawings, the whole collection itself is worth about $15,000 to $20,000.
Oh, that sounds good.
In the first year of Disneyland's opening, there was a contest in the Detroit Times, and it was in the comics section, and you were to name a monkey, and there was a caption of it, as much fun as a barrel full of monkeys. And so we called him Philip McFunbarrel, and it won. And we won a trip to Disneyland in its first year opening, and the studios, lunch with the Mouseketeers, and meeting Mr. Disney, and of course the park. It was a great fun time.
Imagine being a child stepping into Walt Disney's dream while it was still unfolding. She toured the studio lot, visited the animation departments, and even met Walt Disney himself, a moment she still remembers with a kind of disbelief, as if she walked into a world she'd only seen on television. What she brought to the roadshow is the autograph book from that trip, a time capsule filled with the signatures of performers, studio voices, and some of the earliest Disneyland personalities. But one name rises above the rest: Walt Disney's own autograph, signed during her studio visit. Authentic signatures from Walt are coveted by collectors, especially those tied directly to Disney's golden era, when the park was new and the company was reaching creative heights with television and cinema. The collection inside the book is a blend of nostalgia and history. Mouseketeers, actors, and early Disney staff, all signed during a moment when Disneyland was still a bold experiment.
For an authentic Walt Disney, an insurance value on that would be around $1,500 to $2,000, and the rest of the signatures are around $500 to $1,000.
Great, just wonderful. Oh, that's so nice. That's really nice to hear. It has such great memories with it. Thank you.
Some autographs capture more than ink. They capture a moment in time. The signature brought in today is one of those rare examples, taken not just from Walt Disney himself, but from a day of enormous significance in American culture, the opening of the 1964 New York World's Fair. This was the event where Disney unveiled revolutionary attractions like It's a Small World and the groundbreaking audio-animatronic Abraham Lincoln, experiences that would eventually reshape Disneyland and define the future of theme parks. Walt Disney signed an enormous amount of material during his lifetime, but the tricky part is that he wasn't the only one doing the signing. Studio artists and secretaries were often authorized to write his name on letters, drawings, and publicity items, which means that genuine Walt-signed pieces are far rarer than people realize. One of the telltale signs is the signature's looseness. His surname often flows into an almost unreadable flourish, a quick, confident line that's incredibly hard to imitate. The example here shows exactly that quality. Paired with the fact that it was signed during the opening day of the World's Fair, a cornerstone moment in Disney history, the piece gains even more importance. It isn't just a signature, it's a souvenir from the moment Walt presented his boldest innovations to the world.
Once this is authenticated with a third-party authenticator, I would put it up with an auction value of $2,000 to $3,000. Super desirable signature.
My great-aunt Daisy Beck was Walt Disney's grade school teacher, and Daisy let him out of gym class so he could do more painting and drawing. And he simply revered her, and every time he was in Kansas City, he came by and visited, and several times at our home.
And during one of those visits, he left behind something extraordinary, an original animation cell from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, featuring the ever-endearing Dopey. And he signed it personally. That alone makes this artwork exceptional. Disney rarely signed anything himself. Most production cells, letters, and fan pieces were signed by studio staff, not Walt. When he did sign, it was usually for someone deeply meaningful to him. This cell, paired with its personal connection to his former teacher, captures a story you can't put a price on. The artwork itself is beautifully preserved. Hand-painted on celluloid with gouache, it was never meant to survive 8 decades. These materials were expected to last only long enough for the film's production. Yet this one remains remarkably clean, with Dopey rendered in a lively, expressive pose.
A cell like this, by itself, would sell for $3,000 to $4,000. There's a tremendous added value to having a real Walt Disney signature on a cell, and it usually adds about another $3,000 to $4,000. So you're looking at anywhere from $7,000 to $8,000 for this cell.
Well, that's great, yeah.
This isn't the Donald Duck most people recognize today. This is Long Bill Donald, the lankier, early version introduced during the dawn of Disney's character boom. He stands proudly at the center of a small carousel platform, surrounded by Pluto, Mickey, and Minnie, all rendered in delicate celluloid, a material so fragile that most toys made from it never survived childhood, let alone 8 decades in a barn.
This was just a toy that my mother and father had had for a really long time. It was in a barn across the street from where my mother used to live. A bunch of barns and outhouses around this old house, and nobody really cared about the items in these anymore, and they searched around and picked up a few items out of these barns that were filled with other antique and vintage items.
The toy's origins make it even more fascinating. Distributed in the United States by George Borgfeldt, a legendary importer responsible for bringing nearly all major cartoon character toys into America during the 1930s, the piece was originally manufactured in Japan. A tiny customs sticker on Donald's belly, an odd but authentic placement, confirms its foreign import. And despite the delicate material, the toy remains fully functional. Then there's the box, bright, colorful, and shockingly intact, a rarity in itself. Boxes were often discarded immediately, yet here it remains, adding tremendous value.
As far as value, I guess that's what you'd like to know.
Sure, yeah.
Well, at auction, I would have an auction estimate of between $2,000 and $2,500.
Okay.
So that would be kind of fun. And
Yeah.
not a bad find in a barn.
Uh-huh.
Was at a live auction. They said it was a bear backpack, and I knew it was a puppet, and I fell in love with them, and I was the only bidder.
Well, that's great. That's wonderful.
What he actually purchased, however, is far more special. This is a professionally built ventriloquist dummy, not a toy store puppet or mass-produced figure. The craftsmanship gives it away. The sculpted face, the movable mouth, the internal mechanisms, the stitching. Everything about it suggests a custom creation, likely made for a specific performer, promotional event, or studio use. Pieces like this are rarely documented, which makes each surviving example a bit mysterious. But one thing is certain. The likeness is perfect. This Pooh could have stepped right out of Disney's mid-1960s animated shorts, capturing that gentle, honey-loving expression with uncanny precision. Its value appeals to two different collecting worlds: Disney fans and ventriloquist dummy collectors. Both groups treasure one-of-a-kind pieces, especially when they reflect early character designs and show expert workmanship.
What did you pay for this?
$5.
$5. Well, what do you think of that, Winnie? Was that a good buy?
Yes, I'm worth about $500–600, and that's an auction price.
Perfect.
It's hard to say. It's a one-of-a-kind thing. I'd say easily $400 to $600. If they were the ultimate Pooh collector, they're going to go crazy for it.
Yeah.
But it's not just for Pooh collecting, it's for ventriloquist dolls collecting, ventriloquist dummies. And it's fantastic. I'm really glad you came.
Me too.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.
I got them at a estate sale.
How long ago?
Oh, about 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And may I ask you what you paid for them?
I believe around $100.
Well, that's nice.
I bought a group of things, and they kind of...
You know who made them?
A Stife by Disney.
Yep, and they're the Mickey and Minnie Stife.
Yeah.
The guest collects Stife dolls, and these two instantly pulled her back into her childhood, when Mickey and Minnie were everywhere, brightening movie screens and toy shelves. But these aren't ordinary plush dolls. They are velvet Stife creations from one of the most historically important decades in Disney merchandising. At a time when Germany faced enormous challenges, Stife was persuaded to produce Mickey and Minnie for the American market thanks to a visionary toy distributor named George Borgfeldt. He understood something that very few people in the 1920s and 30s grasped. Cartoon licensing was the future. By that point, Mickey Mouse was the most famous animated character in the world, and Stife brought him to life using craftsmanship normally reserved for high-end teddy bears. What makes this pair astonishing is their condition. Velvet fabric from the 1930s fades easily, yet these dolls still glow with vivid color. Minnie's delicate silk shoe bows remain intact, almost unheard of. The oilcloth eyes are still attached. Their iconic Stife button and original paper tags are still present. Even the tiny stitched whiskers have survived untouched. Exceptional examples like these can rewrite the market. Although early Mickey collectibles have softened in value over time, quality trumps trends.
An auction estimate on these could be $1,200 to $1,500 for the pair.
Oh, okay. That's wonderful.
They're just the best.
Really?
The best I've ever seen.
12 to 1,500? That's marvelous.
Some collectibles feel like they were always meant to disappear. Cheaply made, used briefly, thrown away without a second thought. That's what makes this enormous Snow White banner such a shock. A vibrant survivor from 1938, printed not on paper, but directly on linen canvas. It was never a movie poster. It was something even rarer, an advertising display created to promote Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs alongside a popular regional product, Snow White bread.
My grandparents lived in Lewiston, Idaho, and worked at a bakery there, and somehow they ended up with this, and they were working there about the 1930s, maybe early 40s. It got handed down through my mother to me, and my mother actually has a duplicate, the exact same canvas in her possession, And so that's how I ended up with it.
This piece captures Disney in full promotional mode. After the success of Mickey Mouse tie-ins, the studio realized children wanted to feel part of something bigger: a club, a community, an adventure. So Disney created the Jingle Club, complete with membership buttons and little booklets, and partnered with brands like Snow White Bread to reach kids directly in grocery stores and neighborhood shops. Imagine walking into a bakery in 1938 and seeing this banner hanging above the counter: bold colors, beaming characters, and the promise of belonging. The color today is still astonishing, and the only flaw is a small pencil mark that can be easily cleaned. Very few examples from this run have ever surfaced. A stash of unused banners appeared in the early 1990s, and one sold for $6,500 back in 2001.
So in today's market, we think every bit of at least $8,000 to $10,000. But who knows? A lot of time has passed. So if there are a lot of collectors out there who have wanted to get their hands on one and have been waiting for 14 years to see another one come up, it very well could do better than that.
Wow. I didn't expect that. Thank you.
Some souvenirs remind you of a place. Others remind you of a moment so vivid that even decades later, it still feels close enough to touch. This vintage Disneyland ticket book belongs to the second category, not because of the rides it once purchased, but because of the man who signed it.
This is a ticket book from Disneyland, and when Disneyland first opened, instead of unlimited rides, you would buy a ticket book and they would have coupons for the various rides.
But the real magic is on the back cover. On a family trip to Disneyland, the guest walked into the ice cream parlor on Main Street and spotted someone sitting quietly at the counter, enjoying a sundae. It took a moment to believe it. Walt Disney himself, sitting casually among the visitors in his own park. When the family approached, Walt joked about being found, then graciously signed their ticket books. It was a brief encounter, but unforgettable. Authentic Walt Disney signatures are rare precisely because his studio staff often signed documents for him. But this one was witnessed in person, handed directly from Walt's hand to a child at Disneyland, provenance that collectors dream of.
Well, I believe if you were to go sell it, it's something that would bring in the range of about $2,000 to $3,000.
Wow. That's great to hear. I'm going to keep it, but it's good to learn.
That's great.
Before the animators brought Lady and the Tramp to life on screen, every scene first began as a still painting, a quiet world waiting for characters to move across it. The artwork brought in today is one of those rare survivors, an original production background from Disney's 1955 classic, complete with a pair of animation cells still attached, exactly as they were used during filming. A production background is not just a backdrop, it's the foundation of the entire scene. Artists spent days, sometimes weeks, painting these detailed environments by hand, layering colors and shadows to create warmth, atmosphere, and depth. Once finished, it became the stage on which hundreds of animation cells would dance frame by frame. Characters, props, and effects were all photographed against this single painting, giving audiences the illusion of continuous movement. This particular background is instantly recognizable to fans of the film. Romantic lighting, soft brushstrokes, and that cozy storybook charm that defined Disney's golden age. What makes the piece even more special is that a couple of original cells remain mounted directly onto it, a snapshot of the moment when art and animation met on the studio camera stand. Most backgrounds and cells were separated after production or discarded entirely. Few remain exactly as they appeared during filming.
Something like this at auction would bring between $15,000 and $20,000.
Wow. Oh. My son might go to college.
Some childhood prizes fade with time. Others grow more meaningful with every passing year. The piece brought in today belongs firmly to the second category, an original Donald Duck comic strip awarded to a 12-year-old who entered a kids' cartoon contest sponsored by the Nashville Tennessean in 1959. Winning meant more than just bragging rights. It meant receiving a piece of authentic Disney art at a time when comic strips were one of the studio's most recognizable storytelling mediums. This artwork comes from the era when Donald Duck ruled the newspapers, appearing daily in tightly illustrated panels that blended slapstick humor with expressive, energetic line work. Each strip was drawn by a studio artist, inked with care, and sent to newspapers nationwide. Most originals were never meant to survive. They were working materials, handled quickly, and then discarded. That's exactly why examples like this one carry so much weight today. For the child who won it, the comic strip was more than a prize. It was a symbol of possibility, proof that creativity could open doors. Decades later, it has aged into something even more special, a preserved slice of mid-century Disney artistry, complete with the bold strokes and dynamic motion that define classic Donald Duck storytelling.
Something like this in today's market would realize $1,000 to $1,500 on an auction estimate.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you want more incredible stories, jump into our Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley video next, or explore the legendary world of the Beatles in our other feature. See you there.